to Trisha Thune for more.
An activist known as Johnny Bark has taken residence in this beloved tree and refuses to come down. What is he protesting? The expansion of high-cost, low-quality mini-mansions like this one here.
You gotta be kidding me.
Typically when I talk about TV shows, I'm talking about more modern or contemporary shows like a Big Mouth or a Mandalorian. But today I want to talk about a show that came out from 2003. And that show is Arrested Development, which may be my favorite sitcom of all time. I absolutely adore this show. And when I talk to people about their favorite sitcoms, most of the time I hear the same 4 answers or so. I hear my favorite is either The Office, The Other Office, Friends, Seinfeld. And that's about it. Or Parks and Rec is sometimes thrown in there too. But everyone seems to love those shows. And Arrested Development seems to be left out to dry a lot. But I personally, and I know I'm gonna get some hate for this, I personally think Arrested Development is better than all of those shows. I think it might be the most entertaining, the most funny, and the most enjoyable to rewatch out of all of these sitcoms that I've talked about already.
That might not have been your fault.
I know. Nothing works in this house.
Tell me about it.
Is that a shot at me?
Probably.
Because for your information, I got a job.
Really? What kind of job?
Beads.
Bees?
Beads.
Beads?
Job's not on board.
I've watched the show a couple of times now, and I really do find this show very rewatchable. Recently, I started to watch it again, and I forgot, honestly, how hilarious and crazy some of this show is. And by crazy, I mean the people involved kind of are crazy at this point, because you've got, in the starring roles, you've got Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, Michael Cera, and even the crane from Kung Fu Panda. It's a star-studded affair, and even has Ron Howard as its narrator, who narrates over every episode.
Speech. 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 Speech.
The family continued to chant, speech, 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 for no one in particular.
Even the dreadful Netflix ones. And even crazier than all of these well-known stars at this point is who directed some of the early episodes. The Russo brothers, the guys that did The Avengers, directed a lot of episodes on this show. So that's pretty wild. There's so much to love about this show that it's honestly hard to find a place to start with this. And I think the best place to start, though, is with the performances, with the actors that are involved. Because since this show has come out in 2003, every actor almost is typecast of their character from this show since then. Every single performance that these actors have given is basically just a typecast role because of this show. Jason Bateman is always the straight man because he plays the perfect straight man. He's like the Hannibal Buress of this show.
I can't tell what this is. What is this?
Yeah, let's give a quick shout out to Christina Applegate.
It also helps that most of the characters here are very watchable and pretty likable for the most part. Every character is a simple character archetype or stereotype, but what the show does with those is what makes them so entertaining. You've got the nice guy, straight man, Michael, the full of himself magician, Job, the prissy princess, Lindsay, the cold, distant mother, Lucille, and even the straight arrow son of the nice guy, George Michael. Yes, they are simple characters. They're archetypes that you'd find in pretty much every single show out there. But what makes them fun and what makes it so rewatchable is that this show twists those archetypes and plays on them in a way that is incredibly entertaining. I mean, you've got entire episodes dedicated to making the nice guy feel like he's not the nice guy.
Michael decided to have a little
I'm
fun.
doing a little cost projection analysis for a mini mall.
Wow, it's pretty cool you know how to do all that stuff.
Yeah, well, maybe your old man's just a little bit cooler than you thought he was. Oh! Stupid.
The show seems to be hyper aware of these simplistic characters and how simple they are, so it plays on them a lot, and it knows that you know how simple they are. So when it twists them and turns them in ways that you don't expect, it makes it automatically more engaging.
Michael and his son had never been a very successful athletic team. In fact, the only thing George Michael really liked was hanging motionless from the monkey bars, which the President's Council on Fitness ranks as slightly easier than the slide.
Anyway, I was just thinking that maybe we should emphasize athletics a little bit more in this family. Now, start us off with a protein drink, okay? Still doing that, huh?
But this is in large part thanks to the superb writing of the show. I think that is the unsung hero of this, because the actors that get a lot of the credit, a lot of the praise for their performances here, and they do a great job. Again, they really fill their roles perfectly and have been typecast ever since. But the writers introduce so much subtlety to these characters that you wouldn't really expect when you're just looking at the show from afar. If you're looking at the show without knowing what it is, you see, oh, it's a bunch of dumb characters doing a bunch of dumb things, and then hilarity ensues. Another generic show. But what makes it great is how perfectly well written every character is for each episode. Each episode is built off a simple premise, and then it just goes out of control from there. And that's how every episode is. And the writing knows exactly when to push things and exactly when to restrain things.
I owe Hot Cops $500.
Hot Cops?
It's a stripping agency I used to work for. Cop uniform?
Right.
You know, I might have been just a little too believable. Police, open up!
And that makes for some great character arcs, which is shocking to me that a show like this can have a character arc almost every single episode, and movies that run for over 2 hours can't manage to pull that off. Almost every episode has a character in a feature role, and they go through some kind of change, or they grow in some way, and in the next episode, then they are a different person in a way because of that. And every episode builds and builds and builds on top of what they've done before without it being an overarching story, which is so refreshing now with every show being overarching stories. Instead, it sets up the characters to be in situations, and then it has a bunch of random things for them to do in those situations. They put the father of this Bluthe family in prison and wring out as much comedy from that as possible, or they put Michael, the nice guy, in charge of the family company, which makes him in charge of his family, essentially, which paints him as not the good guy. Again, most of the episodes, though, are built off one tiny little premise. There's an entire episode dedicated to a speech that Michael Bluthe gives, and he gives this speech, and then throughout the entire episode, every character seems to make decisions based off the speech that he gave and taking it in their completely own distinct ways. Keeping the premises, characters, and situations mostly simplistic gives the writers a ton of room to experiment with different ideas, which leads us to episodes where there are so many moving parts, it's astonishing that they pull them off in a 20-minute episode.
How is he, Doctor? It looks like he's dead.
Oh my God!
Oh, little guy. The tears aren't coming. The tears just aren't coming.
Just to be clear, it looks like he's dead or he is dead.
It just looks like he's dead. He's got like blue paint on him or something. But he's going to be fine.
What is wrong with you?
Doctor!
Almost every episode is like this to some extent. Certain characters know certain things, and they don't tell other people those certain things, so characters will act off their knowledge without the knowledge of the other person's. And then it just goes out of control when it could be so easily contained by that other person just saying something. So you have these great moments where characters intentionally withhold the information or withhold the information just because they're stupid. And it makes for some amazing comedic moments. Which leads me to the comedy, which is the best part of the show. I've gone on this long rambling about everything but the comedy, but that is by far what makes this show. Even the pilot episode is hysterical.
No, I'm serious. I think they are police boats.
Prepare to be boarded. Prepare to be boarded.
I knew it was against the law!
I mean, you have gags that will go on for entire episodes, or even entire seasons. George Michael is a character who is in love with his cousin, and for the entire first season, all he's doing is trying desperately to get maybe his cousin to notice him and to also have a crush on him. So there's episodes where he has bodysuits on to make himself look more shredded for her. There's episodes where he finds out that she may not be his cousin, so then he goes hard into trying to figure out whether or not she is, so he doesn't feel bad about loving her. And that is what this show does so well. It plays on every character super well, but the running gags are what really makes it for me, because again, there are entire episodes dedicated to one little premise, and most of the time that premise is just a setup to have a joke at the end.
We got something, and you're gonna do time for it.
Those are the pictures?
They're all over the news.
Those are balls.
What?
Barry was right.
Yeah.
Tobias had inadvertently photographed himself while learning to use his camera phone.
See, this close, they always look like landscape. Nope. You're looking at balls.
There's so many clever little gags that are just like sprinkled through every episode, hidden in plain sight almost. And if you don't pay attention, then you're gonna miss a lot, honestly. This is a show that you can have on in the background and still find pretty funny, but if you actually pay attention to it, it is so much more clever and interesting than you could imagine, really. It's such a simple premise, it's such a simple show, but it rings out so much great stuff in there. There's so much great comedy, there's great performances, there's amazing writing, there's some actually really well-directed scenes too.
Is that Mr. Bluthe there? He's got us, Dad. Come on out.
Talking to you, you idiot. Cover.
I ain't your daddy. How's it going, brother?
You want to pop the trunk and roll the windows down, please?
It's just everything with it works. Everything with it works. And if you were to strip away the two embarrassing Netflix seasons that came out in 2013 and 2018, 7 years after the show ended in 2006, and then 5 years after the last season, then you'd have a legitimately masterpiece of a TV show. And if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix, so go watch it. There's no excuse. Go watch it.